Hi, my name is Aishi Zhang, and today we'll be continuing our discussion on reception in cell signaling. So last time we were talking about the three main types of transmembrane receptors, and we covered G protein coupled receptors and receptor tyrosine kinases in detail. Now let's move on to ion channel receptors. What's special about ion channel receptors is that they have a region that can function as a gate, so where it can allow molecules to enter into the cell. And the gates can open and close when the protein changes its shape. So right now in this diagram here, the gate is currently closed. The gate will then open when a ligand comes and binds to this receptor. As you can see, the gate is now open, and this will allow specific molecules to come into the cell. Gates are also very specific. They'll only allow certain ions into the cell. And these ions can then elicit a cellular response. And again, ligands will bind and dissociate, and the number of gates that will actually have a ligand bound to it will depend on the concentration of the ligand in the environment. So in this case, the ligand leaves this particular gate, and the gate will close because the ligand has left, and thus ions can no longer enter this gate. Now let's take a look at intracellular receptors in detail. So before, with the G-coupled protein receptors, receptor tyrosine kinases, and ion channel receptors, those were all plasma membrane receptors. Now let's talk intracellular. As a brief recap, the ligands that bind to intracellular receptors are usually hydrophobic, or they're very small ligands. So for hydrophobic ligands, these would include steroid hormones and thyroid hormones. And an example of a very small ligand be nitric oxide. Let's take a look at how steroid hormones would work. Example, we have, say, testosterone here, which is a steroid hormone. And because it's hydrophobic, it can very easily go across the plasma membrane. Now, in the case of steroid hormones, there will be a receptor that's in the cytoplasm. For thyroid hormones, the receptor is actually within the nucleus. But in this case here, we're talking about steroid hormones, so the receptor is in the cytosol, not in the nucleus. And a complex is formed, and this complex is called the hormone receptor complex. This complex will then go into the nucleus and bind DNA. So the hormone receptor complex acts as a transcription factor, which controls gene expression by dictating how quickly mRNA is produced from the DNA template. Brief recap. We had just talked about steroid hormones. An example of this was testosterone. Now, the receptor was in the cytosol for steroid hormones, but for thyroid hormones, the receptor is actually within the nucleus. We'll be exploring the effects of nitric oxide in another lecture.